Welcome, and thank you for joining me today. I'm so grateful to have you here, sharing in this space of growth, healing, and transformation. If you've already subscribed to Loving Everything, thank you for being a part of this beautiful community. Your support means so much, and together, we're creating a space where love in all its forms can be explored and embraced. As you listen to this episode, if it resonates with you, I invite you to like the video and share it with anyone who might benefit from the insights we're diving into today. These conversations are all about expanding our capacity to love ourselves, each other, and the world around us. And if you enjoy what you hear, don't forget to explore my other episodes where we journey into love's deepest, most unconditional forms. Each one is an invitation to reconnect with the parts of yourself that are waiting to be seen, healed, and loved. So thank you for being here. Let's begin. Hi, Kawena.
Hello.
I'm so excited to have you today. It's been a while since I've seen you.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to catching up with you. I'm looking forward to all of the wisdom that you've shared with me.
Aww.
And that you've shared with so many other people. I think I told you when I reached out to you that you were the impetus for a lot of shift and change in my life. I'm sure you've done the same thing for many other people.
Yep.
And a lot of the things that you taught me, really for me, if I were to explain it or how I explain it to other people and when I send people to you, is that for me, you were kind of you were the missing piece that I was looking for.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is that you filled in. I had already, studied as a Reiki master. I'd already done energy work in other aspects, but you gave me a lot of confirmation of things that I didn't either have awareness about yet or didn't totally understand. And for me, and I really emphasize this with a lot of people, that you can't really truly heal unless you heal the energetic.
Yeah.
Part two.
Yeah, it's a big part of what's going on. When people
especially right now.
Oh my God, so bad. It's so much right now. But because most people, the first place they turn is therapy, right?
Yes.
And if you think about it, back in the day, therapists were, like if you go way back in the day to Freud, it was totally, frowned upon. People are like, oh, why are you going? And there was a lot of, of judgment and criticism about going to therapy. People would try to hide it.
Yes.
Now they wear it as a badge of honor. Like everybody's like, oh, my therapist.
I think everybody should go to therapy, to be honest.
It helps.
Yes.
It helps. But what it's helping with is the intellectual aspect of what's going on with us. And we store energy in our bodies and in our whole auric field, which is fun because now that's the part of healing that's the radical experimentation part right now. There's so much scientific proof coming on board that this stuff is real. Because it really is. And so it's fun because, I've been doing it for so long now.
You have. And you're not just this crazy kooky person that believes shit that nobody else believes.
No. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's nice, so that people are kind of coming more on board with it. And some people, they can't say the word chakra. They have to say energy center. Or whatever, I don't care. It's all it's the same stuff.
Yes.
So, but in terms of healing, what happens is our mental mind, our intellectual mind, it doesn't come on. We don't start functioning like that until we're 7 or 8. We can't process in that way. And then we can process in a limited way until not limited, but we don't fully come into our processing abilities until we're 21 to 24, I think, depending kind of if you're male or female, right? Yeah. That's why they don't let kids drive until they're, older, or they're not supposed to drink until they're old. Yeah. There's a reason for that because people don't process with the same abilities. And so when you're trying to solve through therapy, you're trying to solve with a reasoning mind. And that's how you're healing, and it's totally applicable. But if you were hurt before the age of 7, or you were hurt there's something going on when you weren't reasoning properly, to an adult's expectation, then what's going to happen is you're going to not be able to heal those aspects of yourself through therapy. And if it's an energetic component, we store so much stuff in our energy field. As soon as we hit trauma, our system says, I can't deal with that. And we catalog it and store it somewhere. And sometimes we can kind of work through that. But with our reasoning mind, by talking it out or crying, all the totally, punching bags, whatever, it's totally valid. You're getting it out. But sometimes that stuff doesn't come out unless you use something like energy work, like you can specifically get in and shift that stuff. And that's why so many of my students and clients see such radical shifts, radical, because they're getting to an aspect of the energetic system that they've never been able to get to before. So, just even the healing class alone, I have 2 beginning classes, this intuitive meditation and energetic healing. And people really change in that because they're learning this language. We're already speaking the language.
Yeah.
They're just learning it and putting a name to it. And that's huge.
Yeah.
And then they can kind of, oh, wait, this is going on with me. I'm going to fix this. And then they get in there and then they have tools to actually do it.
They actually have tools.
Yeah.
And the tools were accessible always. This is what I also try to tell people. It's not like they're magic. I mean, they are magic, but...
Well, they're not, actually. I mean, if we want to be really... It feels like magic.
No, but I mean in the sense that, like, they are magical once you learn them.
It feels like it's magical.
It changes so much.
I know, it changes so much.
That part is magical.
Well, I'm going to delineate myself from, like, some of the New Agers. Or
I mean, magic in the sense of like what it can accomplish is magical. However,
like the
it
verb.
Is not sprinkling magic, and everyone can access it.
Yeah,
it's accessible by all.
Well, and it's an ability everybody has. So you're just tapping into the energetic world and learning how to master it
and practice it.
Well, not everybody practices, but they're learning. They should. It would be great. Their life would be a lot better.
I mean, you're right. Not everybody practices. However, the people in your class are practicing more than they were.
They're learning a system that if they want to practice. Which a lot of them do.
That's true.
Most of them do, but not everybody.
You're right. You're right. Because you used to ask us if we practiced. It's hilarious. Yeah, I do remember that.
And Mondays, they'll be, I didn't do it as much as I should have. I'm like, that's okay. Yep. I'm not,
I'm not a disciplinarian. Yeah, like you can beat yourself up. You're already beating yourself up, actually. That's why you're here.
Yeah. No, if anything, people are so programmed by regular school that they feel like, the teacher, they're going to beat them up about not doing their homework. But I mean, most of the people coming to me are adults and it's their life. If they're learning a tool that can help and they're not choosing to use that tool, then that's their own choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it takes a while to kind of shift into things.
It does.
But a lot of them make radical shifts and changes, and their dreams come alive, and they get more they're able to, as you start letting go of what's not yours, that sounds very Buddhist, but it's actually true. We are like, I'm going to backpedal. We're like these amazing little radio, receivers and transmitters.
Yeah.
And a lot of us, especially if you've had trauma early in your childhood and you turned yourself on to, I got to know what's going on around me. But a lot of us, even if you didn't have that, a lot of us are picking up tons and tons and tons of stuff. It's like having 10 radio stations on full blast at the same time. And
especially
it's exhausting.
Now. Yeah.
Oh, people don't know how to handle what's going on. So they're just all turned on, and then they get fried out, or they do drugs, or they do, sex, or, whatever, some way to tune it out and focus themselves. But what I teach is for them to just, you can choose what radio station you want to listen to, but primarily to turn that stuff off if it's just random stuff that you don't care about, to learn how to protect your field and ground and release other people's energy and get in their body. So all of a sudden they're just tuning into themselves at first. And then, and then eventually if they want to learn how to read, they can learn how to read when they learn how to tune into somebody else. But by doing that, what happens is all of the stuff that they were processing that had nothing to do with them, the guy in the next house,
The guy
the
that cut
people
them
downstairs, the
off.
guy, that guy, the guy on the freeway that was a jerk, the
Right.
guy that tried to steal your park, the woman, we're not going to be just mean to the
The
woman
woman
that tried
said
to
you
steal
share
your parking
spot.
space. All those people, you don't need to be picking up all their energy. You don't need that. It's not useful in any way, shape, or form in your life.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, people start getting calmer, more relaxed, more, just more than they can focus in on what it is they want to create or how they want to be or, be happy within their space.
Yeah.
It's huge because a lot of people turn to drugs and turn to different things.
For sure.
So yeah.
Putting the pause button on.
You're changing the direction.
Okay, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But let's start out.
Okay.
Let's start out. I didn't even ask you a question yet. That's what's so hilarious.
Is that it? Oh, yeah. I thought we were just going to talk. This is what you said you wanted.
No, you're doing great. I'm not criticizing you at all. I'm just saying, I knew that you would have so much to say that it's hilarious that I haven't even asked you anything yet. Okay, so can you tell us the story or share the story behind finding the Intuitive Path Academy? Or what inner calling or spiritual guidance inspired you to create this sacred space for intuitive and spiritual transformation?
Okay. Well, I'm going to backpedal a little bit.
Please do.
To how I got trained and then answer that question.
And I might ask you that anyway, but yes, please do.
All right. So when I had tried, I came from a very dysfunctional family, and I had tried everything. I had spent years in therapy. My therapist was even like, you should be a therapist. And there was a whole bunch of stuff that I was trying, and I tried everything.
I'm getting my MA in counseling right now, right?
And and there was this piece missing, and I kind of had hit this dark night of the soul moment where I was an actress. That career went away because, kind of an age isotope. And my fiance had kind of walked out on me and immediately started a relationship with someone else. And I was just, for me, it felt like rock bottom and I didn't know where else to turn. And I started meditating, and I didn't know what I was doing. I just picked up this book that my mother had given me that was collecting dust that I would walk past. Oh, that meditation book. And the book was pretty hokey, but it did inspire me to start meditating. And I just started making stuff up. And it was this kind of meditation where I would scan my whole body. I'd get really, really relaxed. It would take me hours. And then I had uterine fibroids at the time. And then I would just be like, okay, I want to get to the bottom of why I got these uterine fibroids. And I'd focus in on what the illness was, and it would start melting. I made them go away. But they would start melting. And then all of a sudden one day I was like going down this tunnel. It was like this wormhole, this tunnel. And I could literally feel myself spinning and seeing these rooms on the side. And I was like, holy crap, that's pretty cool. And at first I was like, am I on drugs?
You were not afraid.
So, at first I sat up. I'm like, am I okay? All right, I think I'm okay. And I laid back down. I was so ignorant about everything energetic that I was not afraid. I didn't know I should be. So I laid back down and I'd been to film school. I was an actor. I'm used to going with the flow, right? And having crazy experiences.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right. And I started seeing, I just went to one of the rooms, and there was like this Indian woman, and she was like, chop it out. I'm like, what? And suddenly I could see it was like they were wild. It was like being on heavy duty drugs. And she was like, pull out your pain. And I'm like, she's like, chop it out. And I looked down, my whole stomach is like, we're tiny little things on my stomach. It's like, it was crazy. And so I go to my therapist, and she's like, these are all aspects of your psyche. I'm like, sure, I'm down with that. They could all be aspects of my psyche. Every room was my grandpa. I'm like, fine,
It's like internal family systems.
What was going on? So I went with that, and then I felt, and I made the uterine fibroids go away. I felt like I was getting out of my depression. I was really happy with what was happening. And it was really healing me. And then one day I was getting ready for bed and I was brushing my teeth and I feel something in the mirror and I turn around and this apparition is in the doorway. And it was one of the people I had met when I was going. And
Down
I
the
was like,
stairwells.
oh shit. Like,
You can say whatever you want, by the
oh,
way.
I can. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit. That is not, I mean, aspects of my psyche are not walking around my apartment.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
what the heck is going on? Like,
Yeah.
what is this?
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, is it a spirit? And, you ask God and you get answers. And so all of a sudden, all these aspects of my psyche are like, hey, you know what we are now? And I was like, oh no, I got to make this go. This is terrible. What have I done? And then I became afraid. So
I love that you're laughing during this.
So then I'm like, all right, I have to find a school or I have to find something. And I tried everything again.
So now they're all talking to you.
Oh, yeah.
To catch
I was
everybody.
like, go away.
And you're seeing
I
them.
know I could see stuff. Now I could see
Now
stuff.
you
I
can see
cracked
stuff.
open and I could see
How
stuff.
old are you?
I don't discuss age. Somewhere in my 30s.
Okay, in your 30s.
I'm in my 30s, yeah.
Okay. So like you weren't a kid. You were like
no.
you were like a real adult.
I was
at
a
this
real
point.
adult at that point.
That's all I was trying to find out.
So anyway, so I'm like, all right, this is, and I tried different things and it was just too hokey for me. And I started going to the books, the spiritual bookstores. And I was like, what do I find? And then somebody's like, oh, there's the psychic school. I was like, oh man, that's going to be full of some freaks. I can guarantee you, there's going to be crazy people there.
Yep.
But I was desperate.
Yep.
So I went and they were the most lovely, amazing, grounded, incredible people. And
which school was this, by the way?
It was Southern California Psychic Institute, SoCal PI. And they were fantastic. They were a derivative of the Berkeley Psychic Institute.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, they're great. And then as soon as I learned how to ground, I was like, oh, it was the missing piece that I'd been looking for in therapy.
Yep.
So it was like, holy crap. And I did so much healing with them. And it was like closing one chapter from therapy and opening up this other door.
Yes.
Is exactly what happened.
That's exactly what I tell everybody. It's like you had the key all along, but you didn't even know that you had the key. And you didn't know the room existed either.
No. And they told me that the first day, and I tell my students that. Like, you're learning a language you already know. You're just putting words to what you already know.
Yeah.
But once you know it, you know it. You can't unknow it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just radically in love with that stuff. It was finally something that worked, that made sense. And also this whole Hollywood life that had been kind of already going away. I traded that for, suddenly story, which I've always been in love with. I could read past lives, I could read. So I was reading these soul stories all of a sudden, my soul story, other people's soul story. And it was so fascinating. It was so incredibly fascinating. And to be able to read energy, I started having adventures everywhere I went around Los Angeles. I could see angels, I could see this, I could see that. It was thrilling. It was so thrilling. And then when the economy tanked, I was like, oh shit, what do I do?
In like 99?
No, 2008.
Okay.
I was like, what do I do? My job went with it. And somebody was like, oh, psychics do good in a down economy. I was like,
oh yeah, you read it in a newspaper article.
Yeah,
and you told
I
us
did.
in class.
I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this for a living. That's a little crazy. But then I thought about it, and for the first time, I'm a hustler. I used to.
You are a hustler.
In Los Angeles, like if you always needed your side hustles so that you could supplement your income. So I was, and then as soon as you get an acting job, then you get fired from your side hustle because you're gone for a week or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever. And so then you'd have to get another job. It's just the way of life there. And getting a job had never been hard until that moment. And I was like, oh, and God was getting me up here and getting me to do this. So anyway, I started putting out. So it was that, but even more, I woke up. I woke up as to what was happening in the world. So I started seeing that this time that we're in now, that there was just going to be this big moment, this big kind of spiritual battle between good and bad and light and dark.
You
and
saw that back in 2007 and 8.
I saw that in 2007 and 8, and I felt like I was surrounded by lobotomized puppets. Everybody was like, oh, 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 it's all this. And I'm like, oh my God, can't you see through this person, or can't you see through this situation? And it was a lot of questions. Like, for years I had been, I would read the newspaper, and for years I'm like, what's wrong with this country? Why do they keep making bad decisions that are hurting people? Like, every decision they make, like I think Bush had just come out with, this No Child Left Behind. I'm like, it's going to leave all of them behind. You're taking out this, you're taking out, the art, you're taking out the creativity, you're taking out, you're going to overwhelm them with dumb work, and then they're not going to actually learn how to think, and I just, like, so many things. And then I asked, you ask a question and you get an answer. And I was like, one day I was like, maybe it's on purpose. And then everything clicked into place. I'm like, holy shit, they're destroying the country on purpose. They can't all be that dumb. These are very smart people. This is on purpose. And you start asking certain things.
Yeah.
And then being psychic just adds to it, So I went to my teachers. I was like, I think they're going to try to kill a lot of people. I think they're going to. And they were like, you're lit up on World War II stuff. Or one of my teachers said that. And I was like, darn it. And his wife was like, well, they are trying to destroy the food supply. and so anyway, so I felt like I did a reading on my own.
You very well may have been lit up on World War II stuff, as I think I am as well. In addition, you were being
I was also seeing stuff. I was seeing stuff,
yeah.
And I wasn't wrong, And so
I've always seen it too.
Yeah. Well, and then I remote viewed a ceremony, and it was I can't. It was so evil. It was just pure evil. And so I was like, all right, I don't want to live in that world. That world that these people want to create is the scariest. It's just, there's no movie that can compare to how horrifying it is. So it's like, what can I do? And I prayed on it, and I asked God, and I prayed, and I asked God, and it was just like, do this business. And that was kind of my answer. And so that was it. And I was under this stupid assumption that I could wake people up. But once I started teaching, I realized they were so scared. And it really just became, I'm going to give them tools to see, and they can look at whatever they want to see. If I was actively, if I ever kind of mentioned something small, like even something like fluoride in the water is not good for you, like the tiniest things, I got so much pushback and so much freak out. Even just saying the word Jesus was so much flack coming at me that I was like, people will get to stuff when they get to stuff. It's actually not. So I had to kind of change. It was my drive, but what I was actually putting out there was just how to get people to tap into their intuition and manage their space better. And that's been incredibly helpful during, for my students during COVID and during, all of this. I did this class where people were just releasing, I think it was a year or two ago I did this, but where they were just releasing what had happened over the last couple of years at that point. And they were like, holy crap. Like in Oregon, we had fires. We had protests that lasted 101 days. We had COVID. We were shut down longer. Us in California, we were shut down longer than everybody else. Like, there was a lot of, that was trauma that people were experiencing. And for people to like release the energy of all that, one of my students who's a psychologist is like, it's dispersed energy. And like, that's a good word for it. And all of that ick that people had picked up from that time, other people's energy. And they, it's really kind of was like this whole little happy spot for people during that time period, because it was sort of, people could at least laugh and get together and read what was happening and what was going on and make choices and feel like they weren't alone. And, it still is. It's amazing. I love my students. I love the people that come.
I walked into COVID telling my friends at the time that I felt like I had been preparing for COVID my entire life. Yeah.
I mean, and I think we probably on some level have been.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's not just COVID, we name it that, but it's this time period.
Yeah.
I remember being in 8th grade and my teacher had me read 1984, and I was just like, yeah, that's going to happen someday, just not in
In
my
my
life.
lifetime.
Oh no. I think we knew. I think a lot of souls knew this. It's
Yes.
very karmic time.
And they tried to warn us in any way that they could.
Lots of people
For
did.
first wave,
just that
second
work,
wave.
that book was trying to warn people.
Yep.
You know, that was a big part of what he was doing.
Yep.
But I think as souls, we were like, okay, let's go down and fight this, or be a part of this, or
Yes.
you know, I mean, I think that was an actual choice that a lot of people made as souls to be a part
I
of
think
this.
we all chose it. We wouldn't be here otherwise.
We wouldn't be here.
We wouldn't be here otherwise. No one
No.
would. No, no. I mean, no one would consciously, with their ego, choose to be here right now. I think at a soul level, you have to choose to be here right now.
I mean, souls always choose like,
Yeah.
oh, should we go down? Okay, let's
Yeah.
do it right now. But a lot of people are here. You know, the planet's very full. So I mean, a lot of people. You know, there's so much karmic elements that there's just reverberations from so many different time periods that are playing out right now.
Yep.
You know, there's the Atlantis reverberation with all the technology. There's, you know, the French Revolution, you know, reverberations. There's the War for Independence against, you know, the United States against England. There's, you know, when they're pushing this whole, you know, Civil War aspect, like there's reverberations, you know, and we all are having soul memories and we're triggered, and it's an opportunity for people to get through it, you know. So am I answering questions that you had without you asking them?
Yes. I probably skip over a lot of them, which is great. Okay, so growing up in Hawaii, how did the island's land traditions or spiritual essence shape your intuitive gifts and connection to higher realms?
That's a great question. Well, you know, I don't know.
Which island did you grow up on?
I grew up on Oahu, but I was on the Big Island for a couple of years. I think the biggest part that Hawaii did a couple things.
I love Oahu.
I know. I love it there. I think the biggest thing that Hawaii did is not say that people that saw stuff are crazy. It was super common there for people to see things. I'll tell you a story that kind of, you know, exemplifies
Can
that.
I change your mic for you?
Yeah. Do you want to up higher?
Yeah, for sure. It's like not even close to your mouth. There you go.
There you go.
And
Is
then
that
tilt
better?
it. Tilt it. There you go. Yeah, perfect.
So
Tell me the
as
story.
16 okay, so as 16-year-olds we used to go cruising, quote unquote, which is just basically drive around our cars, park at this place called The Point, which is, they have all blocked off now, but it was glorious back then. And we would smoke pot and drink and all hang out, and it would be really fun. And then the cops would come, and then we'd all be like yell a certain thing and go somewhere else. And one day we were up at the old Poly and kind of Morgan's Corner, like way up in the middle of the woods with our car. And I mean, there was like 5 cars there, and, you know, music blasting and whatever. And we used to have to hike down and kind of sit on this cliff, hold on to it, pee. We all had little mini skirts on at the time, pee, and then, you know, come back up. So that was the routine for the girls. And one day my best friend Joan at the time was kind of behind us. And everybody's very intent on being cool. You're in high school, right? Everybody's cool. Everybody's happy, whatever. But Joan comes up and she looks a little surprised. There's like some weird look on her face. And my boyfriend, Troy, at the time was like, hey, what's up? And she's like, I just saw my grandmother. And nobody, this is how prevalent it was. Nobody doubted her. Nobody said she was crazy. We all instantly knew she'd seen the spirit of her grandmother, which meant that her grandmother had probably just died. So this whole gang of teenagers was like, we got to get you home. You know, and there was no teasing, no nothing. Her grandmother had, in fact, just died. And it was just seeing things or having experiences was kind of common.
Understood and welcomed.
It was not necessarily welcome, but it was understood. It was understood. And
Why do you think that is?
I think it's a lot of reasons. I think that places that are, especially islands and places that are really connected with water, there seems to be some, like England, there seems to be a lot of apparitions that people can see in those places. So that's one thing. Two, Hawaii is this amazing mix of cultures, right? So there's a lot of Japanese and a lot of Filipinos and a lot of Hawaiians and white people. And that mix, there's just, it's created a lot of openness for that. So I think there's that. People are very close to the land, but they're also very, there's a lot, when you drive around Hawaii, there's a lot of churches. People have really connected, they're really pushing aside that Christian connection here on the mainland. And you feel that connection a lot less on the West Coast than you do on the East Coast. Like you can still almost feel it, and you really can feel it in the South. But you can feel it even more in Hawaii, So that's also, they're connecting more to God, some people are like, throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I'm not one of those people. I'd rather people were connecting in some way to God, even if it's through regular, through religion,
Yes.
than throwing it all out or saying, oh, woo is the only way.
Yeah.
It's not. What I teach is people how to see and hear and connect on their own. And then it's not a religion.
Yeah.
People can be connected to a religion and, fold that into what they're learning. But ultimately it's that connection to the divine.
It's keeping your connection to the divine.
Yeah, well, and enhancing it so you can see and hear God, that's pretty cool, right? So anyway, I think that's why in Hawaii. Now there's scary stuff that can happen too. There's the
Tell
Hawaiian.
us about that.
Oh, the scary stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, do you want like the Hawaiian
Yes.
version of the scary stuff?
Give me the Hawaiian version of the scary stuff.
But even though I haven't seen it, or just the scary thing that happened to me?
Either. What do you want to talk about? What's better?
I don't know. Maybe both. I don't know. Well, so I don't have any story really. The Hawaiian version of what people is like. There's these things called the night marchers. Now I have never, but it's really a part of people,
The culture. Mm-hmm.
The culture, And so the night marchers are apparently the warriors, I think, from King Kamehameha, but it might have been people that King Kamehameha killed because he united all the islands. But they're marchers. They're the spirits that, if you ever, the lore is, don't take pork over the poly, and don't, if you ever see
pork
the night,
as in like pig pork. Okay.
And then if you ever see the night marchers, you're supposed to duck your head down, cover your ears, cover your eyes, and not look up, or you'll die. So that's what I have never seen the night marchers. So this is not something I've ever.
Have you ever looked for them?
No, no, I haven't. I've seen tons of different spirits in Hawaii and different groups of.
You've seen a lot of spirits, period.
Yeah. In school, they used to tease me and say I was the being seer. So, but it actually, for me, like, I started opening up as a teenager and meditating, and I thought it was all fascinating, and I started knowing what people were thinking and all this kind of stuff, It was pretty cool. Oh, so-and-so's going to call and the phone would ring. Mm-hmm. But my scary experience, which is a real story that I can tell, was I was in my bedroom at night, and I was in the corner room of the corner room in a corner lot, and there's two big kind of very busy streets. So it was so I say all that because it's a place where there's a lot of tumultuous energy, and I didn't know how to set energy. I didn't know any of that. And one day I was trying to go to sleep, and I felt this presence up kind of by the ceiling, and then I had a bathroom in there, and I felt another presence in the shower, and I could feel them talking to each other. And then they noticed that I was there, and they were just like, oh, she hears us. Oh, she does this. And so they started messing with me, and I was so terrified. And I was like 16, 17. I got frozen, when you're so scared you can't move.
Yeah.
And my dad had told us, my dad was a born-again Christian, and he had told us, well, if you ever see a bad spirit, say in the name of Jesus Christ, leave. So that was my only tool at that point. So it was all I could do was to croak out, like, in the name of Jesus Christ. I was so scared. And I felt this thing this black gooey thing kind of lunge at me. And I was like, you don't think that's going to work, do you? But I could also feel its emotions, and I felt it cringe and lunge at the same time. And so I kept kind of saying it, whispering it over and over and over, and those things melted. They disappeared. And then I must have fallen asleep, but then I woke, I don't, maybe even for a few minutes, I don't know. But the next thing I know, my stepdad was standing over my bed, and he was like, do you have a guy in here? I'm like, no. He's like, I heard male voices, so who's in your room? I'm like, and then I started crying because the spell was like broken. He's like, there are spirits in the bathroom, and close the windows, and I'm so scared. And he checked everything, and, under the bed, I don't know what he thought, but there was no men in there. So he even heard the voices. It wasn't even just me that was hearing them. He heard them. He just attributed it to me being a wild teenager. So that actually shut me down. From the side.
And that happens to a lot of people.
That happens to a lot of people.
Why does that happen? Tell us.
Well, people don't have the tools to manage what they're seeing.
Right.
Or
hearing.
Yeah. So that's why it happens. Again, these are all abilities we have, but it helps to know. That's why in my classes, I'm like, don't teach this to other people. And I try to tell them it's not because I'm being proprietary.
Yeah.
It's because they don't have the knowledge to hold space for somebody who has an experience like that.
Yeah.
And so you want to have the knowledge so you can help people manage their space if they start seeing, hearing, or sensing something.
Yes.
And, and it takes time. You want to build people up slowly and securely. So, I'd rather them have all the tools they need in order to manage something so that when it comes along, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly why I send people to you.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is not something I want to do.
Yeah. No, it's slow, and that's why, there's a lot of teachers.
Not that I want it and don't want to do it for myself. I don't want to teach other people how to do it.
Yeah. No, it's not for everybody. I mean, there's nothing like it. It's totally fascinating.
Like
but
the basics?
Also,
sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
But no, I mean, when people open up, they can open up. And so it really helps to know, like, this is what's happening, to give them tools to... it just helps. You need that, I think.
Can you also elaborate on the fact that trauma does shut us down as well?
Trauma can both shut us down and turn us on. It's almost like it's whatever decision the person makes within themselves. So a lot of times, if a kid comes from a really dysregulated family, and they have like a parent that say it's really erratic, and that could be erratic for any number of reasons. It could be alcohol, it could be drug use, it could be we call them transmediums. They run a lot of beings. There could be a lot of reasons that there's
okay, let's talk about transmediums next. Go.
Okay, all right. Do you want me to finish the first question? Okay. Oh yeah, trauma. So basically what can happen is if a kid decides, I want to be fully aware all the time so that I know if so-and-so, whoever, it doesn't have to be necessarily a caregiver. It could be an erratic sibling, just somebody in the house. I want to be aware. I want to know what's going on all the time to protect myself. Like, that's a choice, right? So if a person chooses that, then their psychic abilities can go on high alert. And so they can see, feel, hear, know what people are thinking. And it's a form of protection, right? We have fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So on an energetic level, that's almost like a fight. Like, okay, I'm going to be hyper vigilant, hyper aware. And that's a way they get out. I'm going to move this up. It keeps kind of...
Yep. You got to anchor it. I mean, you got to tighten it.
Yeah.
I got it.
So that's a way that people protect themselves. Mm-hmm. But there's lots of ways people protect themselves. So flight is also a form of protection. And flight in the psychic sense is turning everything off because it's scary. I don't want to see, I don't want to deal, I don't want to know. I'm just going to hide and be safe.
I know a lot of people like that.
There's a lot of people like that too. So if somebody does that, then they're going to shut down their abilities.
They're the people that don't like closing their eyes and have a hard time meditating.
Oh, yeah.
Like a dark room scares them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can happen.
Yeah.
that can happen.
Yeah. What about freeze?
Freeze, for psychic ability,
Yeah.
that would probably be the same thing where they would just,
And then what about fawn? Same thing?
I mean, those are they don't all kind of apply to psychic ability. I mean, fawning would be more, that works great. That's ingratiating yourself with people. So, or being funny or being charming or being this or being that so that they can, deflect or keep liking you. You know, people, it's like, that's why kids are so cute, right? And little puppies and kitty, they're too cute to hurt. So it's that kind of a response that people have. In terms of psychic ability, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I suppose somebody could, just, intuit what people think's cute or adorable or whatever and be that, I mean, I've had crazy student stories. I have one student who he still doesn't know how he did this, but they found him like miles away from his house. He was like in the bedroom, kind of like as a 2-year-old or something. I might be conflating two student stories, but he was like miles away from home, and there's no way. He was like, I was talking to little fairies or little leprechauns, and suddenly like they had to like go send search parties after him. And I had another student who was in little leg braces as like a little baby, and they put her in her crib and she couldn't get out of her crib, and she would will herself to the window. She would just look at the window and want to be in the windowsill so bad, and her mom would find her in the windowsill. And obviously there was no way that this little baby, a little 2-year-old, could get out of the crib and toddle over there and get out.
So how does stuff like that happen?
I don't our minds and our spirits are amazing. So, Jesus says, with faith of mustard seed, you can move mountains. I mean, I don't know how to teach that. I don't know how to teach, teleportation and, all of that. I don't know that total answer to that, but I do know doing this work, we as humans could do amazing things. Mm-hmm. And children don't have those blocks and those barriers saying that they can't. So kids can do a whole lot of stuff that adults can't do. They just don't know how the heck because they don't know they're not supposed to be able to do it.
And they've learned that they can't in their mind.
Yeah, once they learn they can't, then they can't.
Yeah.
But everything is open at the beginning. So so kids are like, we can. I mean, I teach people how to astral project and remote view, and you can send your spirit wherever.
Yes.
But your whole taking your body with you, that's
pretty cool.
That's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other thing.
Good for them.
Okay, let's talk about transmediums.
Transmediums.
I heard that for the very first time in probably 2019 from you, and I remember being like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You just confirmed so much of what I intuitively already knew, but go ahead.
Yeah. So part of another thing that people can do under trauma that can happen spiritually and is they can almost sort of disassociate from their body or pull their spirit back.
Well, they do that anyway.
People do that anyway. Yeah. But what can happen as far as transmediums is sometimes, we're in an interdimensional world. So everybody's got spirits around them. It's part of the world we're in.
And why can't we see them?
Because you can see them. You just have to raise your frequency so you can see them.
I just am catching people up who don't speak the language.
Yes. People.
The reason why we can't see the things around us is because we're in. Well, most of us are in third dimensional consciousness of density.
Well, no, I mean, there's been time periods where people could see this stuff more easily. And it was like if you look at early Christian art where they could see the halos and stuff, people could actually see that stuff.
Yeah.
And partially because they were closer to the land, they were closer to God, they were closer in certain ways to certain kinds of things. And the energy of the earth and everything changes.
Yes.
So right now we're not in that kind of a situation. And
the earth is really
it
sick.
takes time. It's not a McDonald's it's not a McDonald's thing. It's not fast food. It takes time to develop. It really does take time to develop into the point you can see stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, I get people seeing stuff pretty quick in Claire, but and I tell them all the time, it's not seeing stuff that takes the time. It's trusting what you're seeing and knowing what to do with it. That trust, because we have that programming saying we're crazy if we see, right? So that trust is what takes, that's why it's a 2-year program. By the time they graduate, hopefully they have more trust in it. But it takes time to develop the faith that you're seeing something, and that, that's what takes time.
So so you were saying the
With
other thing that can
transmedium.
happen, the other thing that can happen is that kids can, in trauma.
Oh, with transmediums, you want me to? Okay. So what happens, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be children. I've seen a lot of adults just get traumatized or do too much drugs. I mean, that's really why drugs are a bad deal. Like, this can happen to adults. This can happen to any age.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, a person gets a weak connection to their body, and that can happen through mental illness. It can happen through drugs. It can happen through trauma. It can happen through a lot of things. And on an unconscious level, then they sometimes even a conscious level, but usually unconscious, they make kind of deals with spirits, and they allow that spirit. Usually at the beginning, it's protection. They don't know how to stick up for themselves, and so they bring in a spirit to like yell at people, or they don't know how to be funny at a party, and then suddenly the spirit can kind of come in and make them all funny, and so people can get kind of a group. They can have spirits that just pop in and out and influence them, heavily influence them. And again, these spirits around us all the time trying to influence us. Just some people, for whatever reasons, are more open to that influence. The problem with getting influenced on an unconscious way is that you're unconsciously being controlled. It can open the door to control or to influence making decisions that aren't necessarily good for you.
Give us examples. And is this comparable? I mean, how we were using it was with personality disorders.
Well, I mean, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? Like, are the first, is it?
Well, I feel like it's Western medicine's way of defining it, right? And same with schizophrenia.
I've never seen a schizophrenic that is not also super psychic.
That's my point. They were just trying to put a label on the fact that they actually just don't have good boundaries around what they're seeing and what they're feeling.
Yeah, no. They have so many beings on them. It's insane.
Yeah.
And I had a student whose brother went into there's some famous medium haunted house, something or other in Oregon somewhere. And he walked into that place and walked out schizophrenic. And he's like, what happened? He picked up a being, and it was a really powerful, creepy thing. And it got, it's why it's, a lot of what they say in terms of, there's so many ways I could go with this. It's just, that's partially why what I do is so powerful, especially in the Claire, is you're really learning how to not have that control. We call it seniority over your space, and you're learning how to not have that happening. But the old religions are really not wrong when it comes to a lot of stuff they said not to do, because a lot of that stuff, the lying, cheating, stealing, raping, murdering, that kind of stuff.
That kind of stuff. That lighthearted reading
good
stuff.
Time over there. The drugs, it opens a door. It can open a crack.
And how does that happen?
How does it happen? Because the person did something they know was wrong.
Yeah. But also in their auric field.
Oh no, not that kind of crack. It opens if we're in this situation in which something wants to influence you towards darkness.
I see. You mean like a crack in the door.
It's a crack in the door. Mm-hmm. So then the something, whatever can come in. It's an opening, and then it just keeps working on that opening, and different stuff can keep working on that opening, and it gets open a little. And people don't become shitheads overnight for no reason. Usually it starts small. They do something they're not proud of or something. And then they make excuses for it. And then, it's fine. It's okay to, yell at my wife, yell at so-and-so when I'm drunk. And everybody yells at so-and-so when they're drunk. And then, well, then it's okay to yell at them when I'm not drunk. And then it's just whatever the excuses are, so that's the kind of.
And just for everyone listening or watching, just for clarity, everything has, well, not everything. Everything has energy.
Everything has
energy. But when you ingest alcohol, drugs, it has a spirit.
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily that. It doesn't, although I know with like ayahuasca, they say the spirit of the vine, that kind of things.
Or, for instance, you don't think that marijuana has a spirit?
I don't think it has like a spirit. I don't think it has like chakras and an entity and not that kind of spirit. But I do think that there's a lot of.
Not chakras.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have like a personality. It's not going somewhere on the afterlife, and it doesn't have.
It's not living on
it's
karmically.
It does not that kind of spirit.
I mean, there's a spirit to the plant that you're ingesting.
Well, it's got effects on a person that beings or spirits can use in order to manipulate a person and attach to a person. So.
Because it weakens your auric field?
No, you can have a strong auric field and still have beings try to connect with you. I mean, it's harder for them, but they can try. No, it's not about a weakened auric field. It's just because the person doesn't know what they're seeing or what they're inviting it in, and they're getting more disconnected from their body.
And how would you know when this is happening?
Well, it helps to be clairvoyant.
You told me you could see it in someone's eyes.
Oh, sometimes I can see when I'm doing a reading. Yeah, sometimes I can see almost like eyes behind the person's eyes. I have this. My new kick is listening to Catholic priests who do exorcisms. There's a couple on YouTube that are really great, and it's because I help people get rid of a lot of stuff in their space, and so it's a very small community, and it's interesting to hear these guys who are dealing with a lot of the same stuff. I mean, I don't have people that walk on the walls. I don't pull that in, but they, they see and hear and know a lot of the same stuff. They put different words around it, but it's really similar, So the spirits are always looking for an opportunity. We're
Why?
I don't, because we're in this thing where we get to choose. It's like between light and dark. I don't know why, but there seems to be a battle for little humanity's soul. And, we're special in the sense that we have free will, and no other animal, nothing else on the planet has free will.
Or the solar system.
I don't know. I think there's probably different humanoids out there that also have free will. But this humanoid thing, it has free will. And it's there's a lot of influences trying to influence it in one way or the other. And people can get under the influence. And so what happens with drugs is, and people describe it as a spirit, it's not, the spirits can connect in more easily. And the more hallucinogenic the drug is, the more the spirits can connect in. Alcohol, you have to get pretty drunk before before you're like calling a bunch of stuff in. But
and it's not an actual call, just for clarity.
They're not like calling
You're
in.
not like, come on in once you get drunk.
No, it's not like that. But people are losing connection in a way that just allows that stuff to kind of come in more. And so that's the challenge. I mean, I still drink wine. I mean, I don't drink that much, but socially here and there. Yeah. There's nothing wrong. If people could handle it socially here and there, like I only do heroin once a year, it probably wouldn't be a big deal. But that's not what happens. Yeah. People can't. They can't. Yeah. It's just not how it works.
Well, especially with heroin.
Well, with most of it, actually. I mean, pot's so strong now, but I mean, I remember I can't tell you how many people have gone to ayahuasca ceremonies and then feel all messed up afterwards, and they're trying to pitch it as this big, healthy healing situation. But I mean, and maybe it's just because of what I do, but I get a lot of people showing up. And I've done ayahuasca before I discovered this stuff. So it's not,
I've done it as well.
so I don't, but I even had a bad experience doing, I didn't know what I didn't know what I didn't know, but now I know what I know. So people can come in, and I remember this one girl was like, oh, I feel weird after the ayahuasca, but it's the spirit of the vine is talking to me. And I was like, yeah, you have a reptilian standing over your shoulder, and that's what's talking to you. No, it's the spirit of the vine. I'm like, honey, that's no vine. And she just, that's where she was at,
The spirit of the vine.
the spirit of the vine.
Okay, let's see. Where do we go from there? Hold on. Okay. I was going to talk about like the difference between 3D and 5D, but either way, we can move on from that because we've already been talking for a bit now. Okay, so how does connecting energetically with higher dimensional beings deepen our understanding of our soul's purpose and collective evolution?
Higher dimensional beings.
Because you mentioned you're a channel.
I'm not a channel. I'm a medium.
Okay.
So the difference between a channel and a medium is a channel is somebody who allows those beings inside their body, and then they express, those beings are allowed to express through their body. I do not do that.
Do you know how?
I don't want to get that training. I have no interest in that training personally.
But do you know how?
No, I do not know how. I mean, I could if I wanted to open up to all that stuff, but I don't.
And you don't.
I don't want to open up to all that.
That's very clear that you don't.
No interest. It took me so long to get seniority. The last thing I want is that. There are safe ways to do that. I do not have that.
Okay.
I chose not to get that training.
Okay.
I don't even know. To be honest, after Lewis, I don't know anybody that even teaches that. So Lewis, the guy in the 70s that started Berkeley Psychic Institute, he taught some people how to be a safe channel. But basically, I mean, he has some crazy story about this guy that, because the person's spirit is just not in their body and some other spirit totally enters there. It can be very dangerous. It can be very, very, very bad for your body.
Yeah.
Extremely unhealthy. A lot of those people die very early.
Yeah.
It's not a healthy thing. It's like, talk about the wrong gas in a car, like it's, but it's still a good story. So he had taught this guy how to leave so thoroughly that he'd send him on tasks. And one day some guy showed up at Berkeley, and I might be bastardizing the story. So if you're from Berkeley Psychic Institute and you hear this, forgive me if I tell part of the story wrong. But anyway, one day, some guy, this is back before cell phones and all that, but some guy had some big $1 million deal, and he forgot something. He forgot a phone number or an address, or I think it was an address. He forgot it at home, and he'd flown from New York to San Francisco, and he didn't have the address of where he was supposed to go. It was a big mess up, right? So he doesn't know how to get it. So he shows up at a psychic school. He's like, can somebody tell me what the address is? And so Lewis was like, all right, well, we're doing this thing. We're doing this channeling situation. So he told the guy that was the spirit, like, go to New York and get his address, and then we'll let the other spirit in, and then when you come back, we'll let him out. And so he did that. The guy got the address perfectly, went to the guy's apartment, like, looked at the address, memorized it, came back. There's safe ways. There are safe ways. I don't know anybody who's teaching that right now. I know people who...
I know someone who wrote a book on it.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people write books. I don't, there's a lot of people channeling, and I think they're just being super unhealthy, and they don't know how to get rid of the spirits. They don't know how to see them. They don't know how to get rid of them. They don't know how to tell the difference between light and dark. They don't know how to... They don't know what they're dealing with. And that's the challenge with that stuff, because a lot of times, you can be channeling. Some of these people are channeling like 50 beings, and if 49 of them are good and one of them is bad, that kind of thing. You don't know. When you read that psychically, you're like, oh, some of this stuff is not kosher. Some of the information you're putting out is not true. But the best way to tell a lie is couch it in truth, right? So it's just important to
But
know what you're dealing
you don't
with.
see being a psychic medium as a avenue or a sister of channeling, because you are essentially
The way I teach it, it could be a sister, but I don't teach the channeling. It could be a sister. I think it could be, but I think if you're going to do that, doing it in a safe way is really helpful.
with
And
appropriate
it's also,
boundaries.
you don't need to.
Yeah.
It's also a totally unneeded way of getting, I mean, because so what I do is I just call the spirit in and have the spirit connected to God. And then I talk to the spirit and I'm like, well, the spirit says this, that, and the other. And they're like, oh, okay. Well, what does the spirit think of this? And I'm like, what do you think? And so it's like you're an interpreter.
Yep.
So it's all the same information without allowing that spirit in your body. Like,
Yep.
you know, so it's fancier to allow the spirit in your body and, you know, suddenly you have your face transform or your voice transform.
Right.
But I think there's very few people that can do that healthy and truly. I think a lot of people are just calling in a whole bunch of different stuff, you know, and so, you know, you want to be careful. Just it's nice to know that what you're putting out there is legit or kosher or, you know, I mean, it's important.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is anyway.
I agree.
Yeah.
So then, because a lot of people listen, it's no different than a podcast that gets a president elected. You know, it's the same thing. If people are listening.
People are listening and they're making their choices and
Yeah.
they're getting decisions based on where they're getting, you know,
The
their
information
information. And, you know, I'm a big believer in free speech. People have a right to say or to be, you know, that's all great. But, you know, again, there's been a portion of humanity that's always listened to people that were, you know, not on the up and up. You know, there's always going to be these kinds of people out there. And so
They play a role.
and people can choose to listen or not. You know,
Yeah.
discernment is really important. And that's one of the things I teach, you
Yes.
know, that you learn through when you are clairvoyant. That helps with your discernment so much because you can always read stuff. You can always go, oh, okay, this is what's really going on. Or, oh, this is this person's intentions. Or it's hugely beneficial, hugely beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but, you know, some of those people that are talking to the, you know, council of like late being, you know, there's nothing. And also, here's another thing. There's nothing, you know, there are good beings out there.
Yeah.
There are angels. There are great beings.
Yeah.
There are masters
Yeah.
that are trying to help people and do wonderful things. And those people exist, you know, they're fantastic. And, you know, those beings are, you know, can be super helpful. It's just nice to know the difference, you know. And I like to tell you know, and also at the end of the day, some of the students, I find that they are more comfortable at the beginning. I mean, I even get them, you know, healing masters and psychics, you know, like I help with that, but I interview them first. But some of the students just want to talk to you know, to a higher being. And I'm like, well, why don't you try talking to God? And that's scary, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's scary because people put a lot of energy on God or think there's a lot of judgment there. They, you know, so they feel more comfortable talking to something that they perceive to be
an intermediary.
And my little thing that I always say is like, why would you want to talk to somebody at the DMV when you could talk to the President of the United States? And they're like, oh. Depends where you want to get your information and get some help, but the president's probably going to help
better.
a little bit better. But if you want to talk to the DMV, that's fine. I can show you how to do that.
There's so many ways we could go here. So you've mentioned that there's stuff around us all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
All the time.
And you mentioned at one point the girl with the reptilian behind her shoulder. So for people who have less awareness or are listening and are like, wait, what?
Yeah. So one thing
what is around us?
Well, everything is around you. I mean, everything.
So give us an idea.
Oh, I mean, there's millions of spirits can take on any form. So they can, you know, it's not always just human spirits. There's non-human spirits that are around us. Pretty much it's just anything under the sun. Now, lately, there's been these sort of AI kind of, I don't know, they're getting more clever. I call them AI because there's this machine component to some of what's been coming in.
Interesting.
Yeah, it has been really interesting lately. The thing is, that stuff is around us all the time. One of the ways you can, instead of just talking about what's around us, I think what they'd probably be interested in is how to not have it be influencing them.
Yes.
Besides,
both.
of course, taking my fabulous classes.
Well,
which goes without being said.
Right.
So
but there is a lot of stuff around us.
There's a lot of stuff around us. So there's like alien energy, there's humans, there's just plain spirits. There's spirits that are kind of more in the light. There's spirits that are more in the dark. There's spirits that are just insecure and want to hang out and watch Netflix and, have another fucking cookie because I can kind of sense the smell of it. There's all kinds of stuff, and one of the ways, rather than being terrified, because Hollywood tries to make us terrified of it, it's really not as scary as people think. It's just like, we all, one of the analogies I like to use is probiotics. We take probiotics. Those are all little beings, and we try to get as many of them inside of us as possible because they help our gut flora and fauna, and they can influence things to the positive. Whereas something like mold, or what is it? Candida. Candida's mold, right? Candida, anybody that's had candida knows that mold is going to try to influence you. It will try to say things like eat carbs and eat sugar and have another fucking scoop of ice cream. Candida. So does candida hop around your bed? Does it? No, but it's this feeling. It's this urge. It's an influence. And when you stop eating the sugar, there's usually people go through a week of intense cravings. Is that candida, please eat sugar, and then it starts to die, and then people don't have as many of the cravings, So spirits are kind of the same. It's another being, just like the candida or the probiotics, and it can exert an influence. But at the end of the day, you're the one driving your car. You're the one driving everything. It's up to you to decide what you want to eat, what you want to think, how you want to behave, what vibration. It's all up to the person. These are just external forces that are exerting influence, just like the candida.
And keeping you at a lower vibrational state.
Well, if you allow them to exert their influence, they can have that influence. It's still the individual's choice. If you have a being that's influencing you to do drugs all the time, come on, just have it. It's like some bad friend in high school. Come on, what? Token up before lunch isn't a big deal. Who cares? It's not going to do anything, and then you get a bad grade, So sometimes the beings can be a little bit like that, but it's still at the end of the day the student's job to say, no, I'm not going to smoke before lunch.
And most people aren't just hearing this happen.
Most people are not hearing it happen. Most people are getting an urge. But some people do hear it, some people do hear it, and then they go to a therapist or me and I'm hearing voices.
Yes.
If you're hearing this and you are somebody that hears voices, one of the things that's a nice trick to know is if you hear you should go here, you should go there, you should have another smoke, take another hit, you smoke pot, you smoke coke. Oh, you like that, if you hear any kind of a you should be mad at your boyfriend, you should be mad at your mother, you. We don't think like that. We think I. Oh, I'm an idiot. Oh, I wonder if I should have another hit. Oh, I wonder if I should do that. We think
I really want that.
I want that. Yeah, that's how people think. So if you ever hear you, that's some external kind of force trying to influence you. So that's a quick way of kind of discerning, oh, this is not from me. Another way to discern, and sometimes it's just people's energy that you're picking up. But if your state radically changes instantaneously and you don't know why, that may or may not be a spirit. You might have just picked up somebody else's thoughts or emotions. But that's oh, wait, I was in a good mood 5 minutes ago and nothing happened. And then, so you can either track back and go, did I think something? Sometimes we're thinking so fast and then it can change how we're feeling. Did I think something? And if you didn't think something, if the person can track back, and it's not easy, it takes time, that's great. Or sometimes they picked up energy, some kind of an energy, and that's such a big broad word, but under that umbrella could be another person's thoughts, another person's emotions, a being, or whatever, and then if you don't have tools, just going, okay, well, I'm going to stick with how I was feeling before and try not to go down that tunnel. I mean, again, back to that radio kind of analogy, like a lot of times you're picking up frequencies of other they can even be frequencies of pain. I remember not protecting my field because it was too early in the morning, and I climbed the Himalayas stupidly with the wrong shoes because I didn't want to carry big hiking boots around India with me. So I got plantar fasciitis, and when I came back home, I had to get what is it called? It was a Kaiser. It took a couple of years for it to kick in, but I needed to get I don't know, where they have you do exercises and whatever.
Physical therapy.
Physical therapy. Thank you very much. So I had to do physical therapy. And because I teach at night and I do stuff at night, I'm not the early morning person. So and this appointment was like at, 7:30. So I showed up and I had forgotten my protection, and I started getting all these aches and pains. My back started hurting, my hips started hurting, and my elbow, like all these things. I was like, what is wrong with me? And I looked around, I was like, oh, of course, I'm picking up all the pain from all these people sitting here trying to wait for physical therapy. And so I put up my protection and I released their energy out of my space, and instantly I wasn't in pain anymore. So it's that.
So we take on each other's pain.
We can take on each other's emotional pain, physical pain, all of it. And so knowing that it's, sometimes we have our own stuff too, for sure. But yeah.
And we connect into each other.
Well, we can connect into each other. We can do all kinds of things. I mean, humans are amazing.
Yeah.
We're pretty brilliant, really. They don't want you to know that, but we are. But it does help to know how to manage all that brilliance.
So you were talking before off air about your father's passing.
Yeah.
Let's touch on that.
Okay. I might cry. What was fascinating from the clairvoyant perspective is what we were starting to talk on.
You said you were talking to me about how fascinating it was now that you have these abilities.
Yeah. Well, you hear about when you have these abilities, it can make certain events like my father's passing, which on one level I'm having all the same emotional human reactions of mourning and all that kind of stuff.
Loss and grief.
Yeah, absolutely. But it also has this extra added element of spirituality or adventure. I don't know what word to put to it. So, for example, my dad, my brothers don't really believe in what I do. My dad didn't either, actually, which is kind of hilarious. But because now he shows up and talks to me. But anyway, but
of course he does.
Of course he does. I mean, he's
probably more helpful on that side than he is on
no, he's not. But but anyway, so when he first died, he showed up and he was like in the room and I could sense him and I was like, oh, hi, Dad. He's like, oh, you see me? And he ran away. So it took some time to kind of ease into him being able to talk to me, but he'd gotten used to it. So when someone dies and they're about to get cremated, there's the place that he got cremated at. There was a body viewing, which is a pretty, a lot of these rituals are there for a reason. And, when I was trained, we're like, okay, when spirit dies, they collect their energy up off of out of different people or different situations, and then they collect that energy up and take it with them when they die.
I did not know that.
So that's what I was told. Now, so when I go to this body viewing, me and my brother pull up in the car, and we were there 15 minutes early. So he dealt with his stress about like, oh, I'm going to take a nap. Like, okay. So I'm sitting in the car and I look over, and we had given them a suit to put my dad in. And there's my dad, his spirit, standing in the parking lot, and he's like, I'm ready to go. I'm like, huh, okay. And he was kind of flickering between being young and old. And my dad he'd had a bunch of health complications, but one of the health complications he'd had in the last couple of years is he'd had his leg amputated. And I say this because it's a part of the story. So anyway, so we go in, and me and my brother are crying. And my dad was this artist who painted, one of his things was flying children. And he always had like exploding pineapples and fruit and flowers. And it was very tropical. So we'd brought all these tropical flowers and fruits and lilikoi, and we were putting them around him. And we were both crying and saying goodbye. And my dad was also saying goodbye to his body. And he was also walking in, and he saw him standing over his body. He's like, oh, I really can't go back there, can I? No, Dad, you can't go back there. Not going to happen. He's like, yeah. And then my brother would be kneeling by him, crying, trying to talk to him. And my dad would like jump in his body and try to talk back. And, I'm watching all this go down, and I'm watching my dad, like his body felt empty when we first got there, but I'm seeing him take his energy out of it, like chakra by chakra, and pulling his energy out of his body more and more and more. And when he was done, his body really felt empty, and I'm crying, I'm saying goodbye to his body, which is really hard and sad. But also it was so interesting at the same exact moment to watch him do this, and then he I mean, I don't know if anybody else will think it's funny, but I thought it was funny. At a certain point, they gave us an hour, and the hour was almost coming to a close. And he's like, okay, I'm ready to move on. I'm ready. I'm like, okay, Dad, And so he puts his arm up like a superhero, and he shoots off. And everything felt way more empty. And, and I start crying and all this stuff. And then a minute or two later, he pops back in. He's like, what do I do with my leg? I was like, take it out of your energetic body. And we all have different kind of energetic bodies. And I was like, take it out of your etheric body. Just take the energy of it, even if you didn't have the physical. Take that. He's like, okay. And then he takes that somehow, and then he takes off again. So that kind of thing, like, I don't know, how do you don't trade that, that's that, you don't trade that for the world,
Mm-hmm.
That's it's nice to be able to. I'm still very sad that my dad died, but I can talk to him too,
Yeah.
It's different, it's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't, it would be a lot worse if I couldn't, so I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Do you find that people come to you and that there's a common theme for why they come to you?
No, I don't. Sometimes it's depending on what I'm working on at the moment. So if I'm working on relationship stuff, then all of a sudden a whole bunch of people show up with relationship stuff. If I'm working on, I had some people call with their parents dying in the last couple months, at this point I have a kind of a unique knowledge set that I think God sort of spreads people around. I think it's a mutual thing, that it's very elaborate kind of mutual thing that God kind of sets up. I think like this person should work on this, so I'm going to send them that person, or this person, it's like a mutually beneficial thing that can often happen. But not everybody can do what I do. So I tend to, I get everything and everybody, but lately what's been drawn is a lot of healers and people that are kind of doing their own thing, and then they hit a wall or they hit something and they're a little stuck and they're like, ooh, how do I handle this element? And it's just some little piece of information that they don't have. And then, so I can heal them on that kind of a level, where it's just, so I get a lot of that, but I get everything,
How long have you been practicing?
Oh, I'm not a number, since 2010.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, practicing or as a professional?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's 2009, 2010.
And then, you started in your 30s. So, when did you start the school?
Oh, I started the school when I moved up to Portland. I was doing these dinner and a psychic things where I would get up in front of a group of people and then read the
Told me to do that.
Yeah. And I would read the audience, and then and it was fun, and I was good at it, and it was this combo of like me being comfortable on stage. And then it was like improv meets psychic ability, because you don't know what question you're going to get. You have no idea. You're like, oh, it's going to be okay. Can I do it? And that's where the mediumship started, because I didn't know. I wouldn't have like, oh, I'm a medium. Like, I wasn't pushing that at all.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to more help people. But somebody asked a question about somebody that passed, and my symbol for that person, this is a rose. I use that a lot. It fell down, and I'm like, oh. And so finally I was like, is this person passed on? They were like, yeah. And they were asking about, did so-and-so mean what they did? It was kind of a vague question. And I saw, it was a cool first mediumship experience. I saw this on my screen. I saw this pile of papers, and I saw there were 3 piles of papers, and then I saw this wind come in, and all of the papers landed in one pile. And then I heard this very angry female voice in my ear saying, I don't play favorites. And I was like, oh. I'm like, all right. So this woman, and it's like you're pulling pieces and collating it, and I was like, okay, so this woman passed on, and I'm seeing these 3 piles. So I think she had 3 children, and it looks like everything in the will somehow went to one person, but that was not her intention. She wanted it to go to all her 3 kids. And, that was a very healing experience for that family, because, why would mom give everything to one person? That doesn't make sense. People really can, like, did mom not love me? That can open up a lot of wounds. Yeah. And to have that woman, she was hell-bent on letting people know she did not want those. That was not her intention.
Yeah.
So that opened up the mediumship, and then that opened up me. And then I would read people, and then they would say things like, well, what do I do? And I'd read them. I'm like, well, you're empathic, or you need to learn how to manage this, or, you're super psychic. And if you learn how to be, they're like, well, where do I learn this? And I'm like, gosh, I don't know, because there's nothing up here, And so eventually I set up shop, and I was very fortunate in that I had a lot of people sign up right away for the class. And I wasn't ever intending on opening up a school. I side angle things. I'm a side angler. I did this with acting too. I was like, well, I'm just moving to Los Angeles for the summer. 25 years. Yeah. So I side angled the business, so I was like, I'm just teaching a class. And then the students were like, well, what's the next class? I was like, oh, you want me to teach that too? Okay, I'll teach that. And so my stepdad was like, so you're opening up a school? I'm like, I am not opening up a school. I'm just teaching classes.
Which is how you and I met.
Yeah, which is how we met. Yeah. By then I had embraced the idea that it was
you were teaching a school. You were calling it a school.
I was calling it a school.
I sent my daughter to you. I sent my ex-husband to you.
Yeah.
My daughter still practices.
Oh, good.
Rituals. Yeah.
Good.
I will say, do what Kawena taught you. And she's like, I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. It's a school. Yeah. It's definitely a school.
It's definitely a school.
Definitely a school. And I changed the name from a school. Well,
you did.
I did for tax purposes. There was a Well, when I
You
was
were
going to
doing
get
that right as I
right,
stopped
like
seeing you.
COVID-y starting.
right
Yeah.
before
Well, once
that.
I was going to get online,
Yeah.
it was starting to, once that part was going to start coming online, a lawyer told me that they were like, there's a school with the same name on the East Coast. And
Oh,
I legally would have been fine in Oregon. But then if somebody from Pennsylvania or wherever, it could have just created like
yeah.
a
More
weird
confusion.
confusion thing. So I was like, I'll just change the name.
And here you are.
And here I am. Same school, same teachers, same classes, different name. But that was changed a while ago. I think that was changed like 6 years ago now.
We covered a lot of this, so I'm just kind of reading
Yeah.
through just to see what are soul contracts and how do they shape our relationships and experiences?
Oh, gosh. Well, soul contracts are a lot of times they're unconscious, but sometimes they're conscious. So we make a contract where we're like, I'm going to not
Previous
do
to
this.
this life.
Oh, you
Previous to
want the
coming into-
previous to coming to here.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not talking about like a marriage agreement.
oh, well, that could be a soul contract
I
too,
know.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we make lots of agreements. I agreed to come and talk to you today and you agreed to interview me. That's an agreement. We're both totally fine with that agreement,
Yes,
right? You had me
yes.
sign a contract.
Yes.
Totally fine with that agreement, right?
Yes.
So there's nothing wrong with agreements. It's only when we're not fine with the agreement.
Yeah.
And when it's an unconscious agreement that we make, particularly, then that can affect us if we're not in agreement with the unconscious agreement. And if it was an agreement from a past life. Now, some people are like, I don't believe in past lives. And I don't, whether you believe in them or not, there's different ways to look at that. You could say, okay, well, maybe it was an agreement that my family made or some ancestral. And, there's whatever, if that
And the
helps.
lineage. Yeah.
And because people make family agreements too.
And then you inherit it.
You can.
Yeah.
It can. Or not, not
Well,
everybody
I mean,
chooses
if it's a
to.
certain belief that
It can be passed down
that
and
passed
people
down to the women.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or passed down
or
to
men,
the men. Yeah.
it can, not everybody does it though.
Yeah.
So it's still a personal choice.
Yeah.
But your question of how can it influence you? So say somebody in a million different ways, just like regular agreements can influence you. So if say somebody was with somebody and they loved each other passionately and they made an agreement like, I'll love you forever and ever as long as my soul is alive. Holy crap, what a terrible, horrible agreement that is. So then they're like, oh, why can't I love somebody? Or why can't I find somebody? And they come back again. Or nobody's as good. Or I don't know. Do I have a twin soul? All this kind of stuff. Well, they really just have to update that agreement because that person didn't have a body and now they have they're not in sync in this lifetime with that. That kind of thing can get in their way. If they were a priest and they took a vow of poverty and then they're now in 2025 trying to make money and they can't figure out why they can't make money, that vow of poverty, so sometimes they're conscious. Here's
or life is hard.
Life is hard. That can be an agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Here's when I saw a kid.
You have to struggle to be happy.
Struggle to be happy.
You can't enjoy life unless there isn't some struggle to it.
Women are crazy. Men are shit. People, and they create those agreements by talking. Like in LA, women were always like, oh, men in LA are horrible and they're just not relationship material. And, there are a lot of horrible people. There's great people too,
Yeah.
But that
There's
was an
horrible
agreement. LA does have a high propensity for narcissism, but nevertheless, they were creating that agreement. They were, and so when you start going, this is my reality, then everything in your space lines up to support that reality, and so then it's harder to kind of manifest outside of that. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And so I guess in context, when I first met you and we did an individual reading together, you read in my Akashic records that I had multiple lifetimes. This is kind of where I'm going with this. That I had multiple lifetimes with my past partner.
Yeah,
right?
That can totally happen.
And so you were like every time I go back to the two of you, it's very interesting. You're like, this doesn't happen a lot. And you probably don't remember saying this.
I don't remember this at all, but that's okay.
You don't keep the information. But the point is I remember because I was like, wait, what? You said it's very interesting because every time I go back to check on you, depending on whatever lifetime it is, your face, sometimes you're the woman, sometimes he's the man, sometimes he's the woman, sometimes you're the man. So that's what I was kind of getting at with soul
Okay.
contracts is sometimes the reason why we're so compelled.
Yeah, that's karma. And that is contracts and karma. And yeah, karma is when there's unfinished business. So sometimes that compelled feeling you're describing is unfinished karma. And that can be very intense. It can be very intense. You meet somebody and you're like, I have to. It's like you feel like, it's karmic when you don't feel like you have a choice. You're like, I have to. It's this absolute draw. And that can be, it is what it is. Usually we have unfinished business with people that, sometimes it was great, but a lot of times it wasn't great. And that's why we have the unfinished business.
And then we have free will in this lifetime on whether or not we choose to finish that business. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And how do people get out of these contracts?
Awareness and choosing something different and then keeping their boundaries, and just saying no. But awareness is huge. Just knowing that it's there. There's a whole method I teach in the Claire, but just for regular people, just saying no, knowing it's there and then choosing something different, yeah. And that's why, getting control of your thoughts or an awareness around your thoughts can be so powerful because our thoughts are constantly, we're making those agreements with our thoughts. You can write, you can write down, your goal. My goal is to meet a man that's like, 5 pages long and stuff. But in your brain, if you're like, men are this and men are that, or there's no good men, or men only want to date girls that are 25 and under, and whatever that story is,
you're creating your reality.
That can get in the way of
it's
your
in
manifestation.
Between you and
you're kind of making an agreement. Not that there also aren't people that think all that, or that, because the two can be also happening at the same time. I'm trying to think of other agreements that can, there's just a million. There's a million different agreements that can be affecting people.
Let me see how to finish this out because we were even talking 90 minutes, which I knew was going to happen. I knew it. Let's see. Okay. If you could share one piece of wisdom about love, healing, and intuition, what would it be?
Oh, God. One piece.
Okay. However you want to end. It doesn't have to be one piece. It could be
No, but it's a really
pages.
good. It's a really good. It's a really good question. What would be the one thing that I could share? I'm just going to bogart God. It's like love. Love and risk. Our relationship with people and our relationship with ourselves and opening up to love and connection is just probably, it's the scariest thing. But it's also the most worthwhile thing. And it can be the most healing. But I put love for yourself in there because love for yourself also means you're not going to choose somebody who's totally shitty. When we love ourselves enough, we'll be like, oh yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do this instead. Mm-hmm. That's really hard. Mm-hmm. That's really hard to love yourself that much. Mm-hmm. It's easy to love other people that much. Mm-hmm. Oh, I love my kids. I don't want them to be with that jerk. Mm-hmm. But if I had to choose one thing, it would be love. If I had to choose the second thing, it would be awareness. Having
Did you say risk too?
For the love part? I said awareness.
Oh, awareness. Originally. I thought you said love and risk, and I was like, I'm interested to hear about risk.
Risk. Well, risking leaving, risking loving, risking setting your boundaries, risking opening up, risking being vulnerable, risking being authentic, risking taking a step forward, risking asking somebody out, risking going out, risking saying I love you, risking getting married. These are risks. It's scary. Risking having a baby, risking being old and accepting that, you know. It's all risk. You know, how do you manage that? You know, it's scary. And, you know, so, and accepting yourself and all of that. Risking accepting yourself when everybody says you're not supposed to accept yourself. You know, you have to be this, you know, oh, you're supposed to be this, look like this, to have everything look like this in order to be acceptable. You're like, I'm going to, you know, there's just a million ways of risking. But if you don't risk, if you don't take those chances, then you're not going to get the reward. And risking loving God. Even though that fear is like, oh, you know, a lot of people look at God as this big Santa in the sky that's just judging you all the time. And, you know, and that's not necessarily the case.
No.
There's a lot of love there.
Yes.
So,
Incomprehensible.
oh,
amounts.
so much love.
Yeah.
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 But
Like nothing we've ever felt here.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. This was fun.
It was super fun.
was
I feel
really
like we
good.
could have done it for another 5 hours.
I did too.
Thank
you.
Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting this podcast. Your presence here means the world to me, and I'm truly grateful for your time and energy. If this conversation resonated with you or sparked any questions, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing from each of you. Your insights, experiences, and curiosities always enrich this space. It's important to remember that trauma, often unseen and unacknowledged, can keep us from living fully in our joy. Through my intuitive healing process, I help release the weight of generational trauma, empowering you to reconnect with your true self and experience life in greater harmony. If you feel called to explore this deeper work, I invite you to book a one-on-one intuitive session or even embark on a personalized journey with a Phoenix Immersion, a 2-day retreat designed to support profound transformation. You can find all the details below. For those who've liked, subscribed, or left comments already, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your engagement means everything, and I'm deeply grateful for the connection we're building in this community. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. I'm excited for all the healing and transformation we'll continue to explore together. As always, I'm forever grateful for you, and I cannot wait to see what unfolds next. Take care, and until next time.